Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris back again, episode 194. And the time has come. We are obviously doing this album by request because I don't think there's any chance in hell either one of us would have selected this. So a little shout out to all of our Patreon fans who get to pick these albums. We have come to Metallica's magnum opus, Saint Anger. But before we get into all things Saint Anger, how was the rest of your week, my friend?
Not probably just about as good as having to listen to this album. So, yeah, it was. Everything was at least consistent, if nothing else.
I hear you. When you were not listening to this gem of an album, did you have a chance to listen to anything else that might have served as a palate cleanser?
Yeah, to say the least. I actually firmed up a new playlist earlier today, and it had some cool things on it. I'm going to post it probably before the end of this year. I'm hoping if I can actually.
You got a lot on your plate, young man. So it's okay.
If I can remember. But the very first thing I want to mention is a band called Zornheim. One of the members of the band reached out to me on Threads of all of the social media outlets that were on. I think that was one of the first times someone had reached out on Threads, which was pretty cool. But the reason that he had reached out was because he had become aware of the podcast through the Symphony of Enchanted Lands Rhapsody episode that we did a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying that his band is inspired quite a bit by Rhapsody or in that era of Rhapsody, but however, it's kind of done in a black and death metal sort of way. It's a symphonic black / death metal band. They're from Sweden, and their most recent album came out in 2021. It was called the Zornheim Sleep Experiment. It was their second full-length album. They released an EP last year called The Forgotten Inmates that had some, interesting remakes of some of their songs. But the song that they recommended to me was Slumber Comes in Time, which is from that Sleep Experiment album. And I really dug this song. I mean, I'm not the biggest black or death metal fan in the world, as we all know, but the way that they mixed in that symphonic kind of sound really made it interesting to me. So that will be the opening track on my second playlist of 2024. I'm not even sure if I've gotten to post the first one yet, but I might just have to do a playlist dump at some point. But
let me just
you listen to this too. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, you had sent this to me. I admittedly am not the biggest Threads guy, and you are a much bigger social media guy than I am. However, I did have a chance to listen to this, and I was really, really impressed. I thought the melody was fantastic, and I think I have a little bit more of a palate for this kind of stuff. It was great. I really enjoyed it. I think that the future is bright. I hope they put out some new stuff. I have to go back and check out some of their older material. Not that they have a dearth of stuff, but I'm definitely going to post one of these tracks this week because I think more people need to hear this stuff. The future is bright. I'm glad he reached out.
Yeah, me too. So if you're listening, thank you for the recommendation, and we'll be keeping an eye out and an ear out for future releases from the band. Couple other things. We really didn't get a chance to talk about much new last week, so I guess we're kind of playing a little bit of catch up. But did we have a chance to talk about the new Master Plan single, Rise Again?
I think I posted it to our socials, but I don't know that we had a chance to talk about it. What'd you think?
I loved it. I first of all, I felt as if we were so overdue. I mean, Master Plan has, the last time they released a non-Halloween covers album was around the time that they played at Prague Power when we saw them. And
that album was fantastic, by the way. That was a really solid release.
But it was a while ago.
Yeah.
And so this is the first original Master Plan song since that album came out in 2015. 2013, Novum and Initium. They've released a live album and DVD Blu-ray, a album of Halloween covers, and now it sounds as if they will be releasing a new album this year, which also happens to be, I think it's actually not the 20th anniversary of their self-titled album. The 21st anniversary of this will be this year. This album came out in 2003, but I know that the 20th anniversary edition of the self-titled debut album was released, I believe, in January. There's a bonus. Actually, it did come out at the end of last year in Europe. I think it didn't come out in the States until January, and that might be where my confusion lies. But I want to pick that one up because there's a DVD on it of a live performance from back in the early days of Master Plan, which is a really something I really would want to check out. So anyway, long story long. I thought the new single was really good. I love Rick Altsey's vocals. It's just different enough from Jorn. It has that raspiness to it, but I think that the body of his voice is different. And I think it really fits. And you can tell this is just kind of Roland doing his thing, his songwriting. Really great tune. I'm excited to hear the full album when it comes out, hopefully before the end of this year.
You took the words out of my mouth with the whole it's been a while. I couldn't believe, looking back, how long it had been since we've heard original material from this band, especially when you factor in that they've only been around for just over 20 years. And, it took about 10 for us to get this single. So not only am I looking forward to the album, not only is that something we should consider talking about on the podcast in long form, just because I feel like it's a band that we should go back to, but also it's interesting that, in many ways, it's a band that I'm dying to see live again. Even though I loved that first set, I thought it was absolutely phenomenal. It was like a greatest hits set. I would love to hear another set, maybe sprinkle in some Halloween covers just because I'm a mark for some of that stuff. But just a great band. It's nice to have them back. And it was a surprise. I did not know that they were coming out with a single. So when it dropped, it was a bit of a shock, but a pleasant surprise to say the least.
Yeah, no doubt. Same goes for the band Arian, who I believe did you say you saw them on the cruise?
Yeah, I caught one of their sets, or at least part of one of their sets.
Did they play their new song "Wings of Twilight"?
I don't. They played, I think, I heard 3 new songs in the set, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, I think I wouldn't swear to it. But I never in my life did I think I would ever see this band live, let alone twice. So I guess I'm doing something right.
Yeah, well, they dropped the new single. It features, shocker, Melissa Bonney.
Everybody's favorite guest spot.
Yeah. Song's called Wings of Twilight. It does not look like it is on a future release. It's being released as a single. That doesn't mean it will not be on a full-length album upcoming, but they are due. So I thought that was quite good as well. And I also just want to mention one other band, and it's a band that we've covered on the podcast, Descendants of Erdrich. They have not released an album in quite some time, and they dropped a 2-track, I guess you'd call it EP or single, on their Bandcamp page. It's called the EP is called The Mythology Origins. These 2 tracks will be on their next full-length release, which is supposed to come out later this year. They have one track called Alchemy, which is a medley of songs from Wizards and Warriors 2, Iron Sword. Some may remember that game as the one with Fabio, not Fabio Leone, but Fabio, the Italian model who appeared on the cover. Person? No. You can tell by the hairstyle.
That's true.
Actually, that's gives fair. It away. He was on the cover of that game. And the second track is from Final Fantasy Tactics, and it's called Equinox. So one of the things I noticed when listening to this is that now that Lauren, who was their flute player when we covered that album, Thanks a Million, back in October, since she's no longer with the band, you don't have that kind of overarching flute sound. It's more of a traditional kind of power metal-esque game cover sound. I know some people didn't really love the production on the album that we covered, and I think that the production on this is a lot better, or probably a lot more palatable to certain ears, which is ironic considering the album we're discussing today. But there's probably a few other things I listen to too, but I don't want to yammer on for too long. So I will defer to you for anything else that may have come your way this week.
Well, first and foremost, an EP was released by a band that we've not talked about, but by a band that I've liked for a long time. But I had a little bit of trepidation just because they have a singer change. And whenever that happens, it could go one of two ways. And I still am not entirely sure if I like the new singer or not. I think I do. I don't know that he's as good as the former singer, but the band is Persephone, and they released a new EP after quite a bit of time, I suppose. But they released a new EP. And I love the music. It was a little more straightforward than some of their more proggier stuff that they had been coming out with the last few years. It's called Lingua Ignota Part 1. One can only assume Part 2 is not too far behind, although ask Pain of Salvation about the Perfect Element. So I don't know, maybe there is a Part 2 coming. It was enjoyable, and I've listened to it twice, and I think I'm going to keep going back to it because there was something charming about it. And even though I don't think the vocalist was as notable as the prior, it wasn't bad. It was just a little bit different. And so I would encourage people to listen to that. I will try to post one of their tracks this week. And the other band I kind of just wanted to mention, and I might have mentioned them recently, but a band that was new to me, Matter Mortem, a doomy band with like this female vocalist, and I had heard a new single, and there was something about it that really just grabbed me, and I'd never heard anything by this band. They released a new album called Old Eyes, New Heart, and my honest review after 2 listens, a little bit unbalanced. There were certain songs that I loved and other songs which didn't grab me as much, but there was enough there that I'll be going back to this one as well. And that first song, Coming from the Dark, which kind of kicks this thing off, is probably my favorite song of the year so far. But again, as you get deeper into the album, it loses me just a touch. But I certainly think it's worth at least one listen, so I wanted to mention it.
Sounds great.
What doesn't sound great is the album that we are covering this week. And you kind of tossed that one up as a softball, and I don't even know if it was intentional, but alas, here we are. Metallica's Saint Anger. Let me paint the picture. First of all, again, thank you to all of our Patreon members. If you want to...
Except for Keith.
Everybody except Keith, we want to thank you for all the requests. We love doing request episodes. We've got a bunch more in the queue. And invite everybody else to keep them coming in the coming months and whatnot. And if we get even more, we'll probably do more than one a month. But this was a request that has been on the list for a long time. And Keith Nickel has been a long-time listener of the show. We appreciate that. I'm glad to hear that you're finally feeling better after getting the flu on 70K. But
the metal gods paying you back for your selection.
That's right. If pray to Rob Halford and good things happen. This is something that I think we've, in a sense, been putting off for a while. We tried really hard to get all these requests in, but I have been dreading this for a long time. And just to give you a little peek behind the curtain, about 2 weeks ago, I had tried to sit down and listen to this album. And after 2 songs, I had to turn it off. I couldn't take it. That's like my first impression. I literally couldn't listen to the album, but I forced myself because that is what we do here by request. And we are, in short, going to try to do our best to give an honest assessment of this album. And I know obviously we're poking fun out of it. And I don't know anyone that actually likes this album. Let me start there. I mean, it won a Grammy, but yet I don't know anyone that actually likes this album. And if you do, please tell me why, because I don't appreciate it, but I tried. Let me just kind of set the stage a little bit.
Can I stop you for a second?
My guest.
It won a Grammy?
We'll get there. Oh,
God. That's...
I mean...
I already had very little respect for the Grammys to begin with, but this might...
Oh, no. It is incredible that in 2004, The title track, which mind you might be one of the worst songs on the album, I want to start there, won Best Metal Performance. What the fuck? I mean, like, what else can I say? Like, what the fuck? This album, it's so weird, right? And I think it's emblematic of the times, and that's something I want to talk about. But the long and the short of it is June 5th, 2003, after 6 long years since Reload had come out, Metallica releases their 8th studio album. And let me also say that since then, they've come out with 3 more studio albums. Good to varying degrees, listenable, passable to varying degrees. I would listen to the new album every day for the rest of my life if it meant I didn't have to hear this album ever again. I mean, it's just, this album is an anomaly in many ways, and I do think it is a sign of the times. Metallica obviously had those first 4 albums, which were simply put some of the best metal albums ever made. You know, they get a little old in the tooth potentially, but like there is just some phenomenal material and all the accolades are well deserved. They come out with a self-titled Black Album in 1991, obviously going for more commercial appeal, and they hit that out of the park with, you know, an album that I think is still on the Billboard charts. It just, you know, it's one of the most seminal metal albums, whether you like it or not. It is, and I think everyone would agree there's some good stuff on there. Some people still love it, and that's great. They come out with Load and Reload in 1996 and 1997, and that was a stark departure for the band. Those albums do not sound like classic Metallica, and there was a lot of pushback from the fan base as a result of those albums. And quite frankly, I actually think those albums have aged well for the band, because there's actually some really good stuff on there when you kind of forget who recorded it. And then all of a sudden there's this long hiatus. There's some issues in terms of band members. Jason Newsted leaves the band, alcohol issues and rehab issues. And the band was clearly in the position where they needed to put out a new album. And lo and behold, not long before this, you know, 5, 6, 7 years before this, the whole nu metal thing hits the scene. Bands like Korn, Limp Bizkit, and so on and so forth. Before we get into the songs, and we'll get there shortly, I believe this was their attempt to dip their toe into the nu metal genre. It just didn't work. And it was almost like they were trying to stay relevant and keep up with the times, because some of the bands I mentioned, other bands like Slipknot and Mudvayne, these bands were really big at the turn of the century. And I think Metallica was trying to not only imitate, but kind of grab or gravitate, you know, or have some of those fans gravitate towards one of these classic bands that have been around for 20 plus years at this point. They even went out on tour with some of these bands in 2003 to kind of celebrate this album. They did the Summer Sanitarium tour with the Limp Bizkit, the Deftones, Linkin Park, and Mudvayne. And then they would go out and they would do another leg of the tour in 2004 with Godsmack and the Lost Prophets and Slipknot. I mean, they were going out with the biggest bands of the time with an album that kind of catered to those fans. The problem is, if you weren't into nu metal or alternative metal or whatever you want to call it, this was just a swing and the miss for anybody that liked thrash or classic 80s metal. It was just so different. Do you agree with what I'm saying, or am I like way off base here? Because that's what when I kept listening to this, unfortunately, I kept hearing like shades of Korn, and I'll be honest, like I can stomach that for what it is, but this is just unpalatable to me in many ways.
I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I will say that I get the nu metal comparison, at least as far as the instruments go. But I feel like where it doesn't really compare to that is that the lyric, or the I should say the vocals are more, you're not getting kind of that mix of like rap, which I think a lot of nu metal kind of had like a rap kind of element to it. And I think that's what, to me, when I think of nu metal, I think of this marriage of rap and kind of an alternative style of metal. This is definitely has more of an alternative style of metal than any Metallica album, I think, before or since. and so I definitely agree with you that, like, of course, like the bands of the time, they're going out touring with them. There's definitely some similarities there, but yeah, to me, it's just like I don't know, like the band, like to me, they they spent like a long time almost trying to figure out what their identity was. You know, it's like they were, you know, like you said, like the thrash band of the '80s, leading the way. I tend to put the Black Album in the same pile as the previous three albums. I'm not the biggest Kill 'Em All fan, but the other three albums before the Black Album are all just vintage '80s thrash metal. I love the Black Album. When I first heard it, it was my first Metallica album, so like I just thought that's what the band sounded like. And now in retrospect, yeah, there's definitely a level of polish to it that the previous albums didn't have. And I think that in retrospect, I think fans would have been okay if that was just the direction that they were going to go, that it was still thrash metal, but just with a little bit of a, you know, radio polish to it. And then they come out with Load and Reload, which are two albums that I actually enjoy quite a few songs from, but it's definitely more of like a hard rock album than a metal album.
Yeah.
And then they go to this, which is like this, you know, there's, I think, like elements of thrash here and there, but it's mostly covered up by whatever else. And the other thing too that's just so infuriating about this album, and we'll get into the production and the sound and everything, but the length of the songs, these songs are so drawn out. The song Saint Anger is really just the same song repeated. Like, it doesn't need to be 7 minutes long because it's just one song played twice. And it's like that with a lot of these longer songs that are like, you know, 7 or 8 minutes long. And, you know, this is not unusual. I mean, the songs on Death Magnetic are also all almost entirely over 6 or 7 minutes long also. But something about that album to me was a little bit more in the ballpark of what the diehard Metallica fans wanted to hear. It was almost like a return to the original sound. I don't think the songwriting ever reached the heights of the you know, Master of Puppets, Ride the Lightning, and Justice for All Black Album era. Like, I think that was just their peak songwriting era. But I quite enjoyed Death Magnetic and then the two albums that followed as well. But man, this was really like my first time sitting down and listening to Saint Anger. Like, I don't know that I ever actually listened to it because it was just so universally panned and disliked that it just didn't seem like it was worth listening to. That said, I was very familiar with the title track because it was the theme song to SummerSlam 2003. And so it was on every episode of Raw and SmackDown ad nauseum, but they'd play it for like 30 seconds. And I really liked it. Like, it was 30 seconds. It was perfect. And so I remember this song super well. The rest of the album, I did not know. I don't know if there's any songs that any Metallica fans happen to hold in high regard. The only thing that even sounded slightly familiar to me was Some Kind of Monster, and I think that's only because that was the name of the documentary. So, yeah, this was really kind of an education for me. But then, like, it's weird because some of the reviews were really strong, which is really odd because I've never talked to anybody that had a kind thing to say about this album.
Yeah, I point you to Exhibit A, Master of Puppets, and Exhibit B, 1. The band can write good songs that happen to be long. The problem is, without any solos to break up the songs, number one, and number two, without any discernible difference between what is otherwise a verse and a chorus, it was like they took spaghetti and just threw it against the wall to see if it stuck. And it was like they had all these ideas. Many of them were not very good, but they had a bunch of ideas and said, let's cut and paste some of these ideas, stick them together into a song, and then just put it on a loop for an extended play, all of which creates an album that is just not very good. I had extreme difficulty picking a song of the week this week because I didn't find any of these to be rather enjoyable. And at its core, it is the same formula that they've been using for years. And by that, I mean James Hetfield, Lars Ulrich, Kirk Hammett, and their longtime producer who played bass on the album, Bob Rock. So it's not like these guys have not made music together. Say what you will about Load and Reload, but as a hard rock song, King Nothing, not a bad song. Fuel, not a bad song. And again, I'm not suggesting that these songs are as good as Trapped Under Ice or For Whom the Bell Tolls. I'm not saying that. But in a vacuum, those are enjoyable songs with a standard structure that you can kind of sink your teeth into. And they're varying degrees of good. Some people will say it's a little below average. Some might say they're a very good song. Others may love those songs that I just mentioned. I don't see how any critic could say that these songs are great. And then you combine all of that with production that would honestly make me want to long for the last Iron Maiden album. And I shat on that production 2 years ago when that album came out. This is an incredible piece of music because it's 75 minutes and it probably could have been 35 minutes. I don't think my opinion would be all that different, but 75 minutes makes it just borderline unlistenable.
Well, I point people in the direction of YouTube. Somebody took the time to remake Saint Anger. And it's the video is actually called Saint Anger, but if it were good. Which I found, and what's weird is that I Googled this because I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if somebody's ever tried to re-record this album and make it sound, at least from a production standpoint, a little bit more tolerable. And this guy, his name is Michael Shea. He has, where is it? 229,000 views on this video of basically a re-recording of Saint Anger. What he did was pretty much just took James's vocals and then re-recorded everything from the ground up, which makes the snare sound way more tolerable. But what he also did was he cut down some of these tracks, and the entire album comes in at just under 55 minutes. It's actually it makes the album rather listenable. I think it's really interesting, and I definitely recommend that you guys check it out. But one of the things that blew my mind as I was doing this little search on YouTube is the next video that came up was the video for Saint Anger, the title track of the album. It has 37 million views on YouTube. This music video that was filmed, I think, in an actual prison. So
how fitting.
Somebody liked it.
Or was just so curious. I mean, this has been an experience, to say the least. The tracks, like I said, this thing clocks in at 75 minutes. It's 11 songs. Some of these songs simply didn't need to be there. Others could have been cut down. That being said, I am curious if there's any song that you liked, like genuinely liked. And so when you pick your track of the week, which I have to assume is probably going to be your favorite of these tracks, I'm really curious to see your opinion, because I do have a track of the week. I do hit the microphone. No, I do have a track of the week, and I will get there, but it was truly a struggle. So we've gone about a half an hour at this point. Let's get into it. This album kicks off with a song called Frantic, and you immediately know that this album is trash right as soon as this song kicks off, because you have this drum sound, and again, I'll call them new metal guitars because I feel like everything is down tuned to a fault. I don't like the main riff because I think it's repetitive and kind of gimmicky, and it just sounds like a bad Korn ripoff to me. And like at that point, I'll just go listen to the first Korn album. Like, again, not my thing, although maybe I enjoyed it more in 1996, but like I couldn't get over that. And then you get to these lyrics. My lifestyle determines my death style. It is the worst lyrics from a band that had some pretty cool lyrics earlier on in their career. The bridge sounds like it's kind of just slapped on, almost like the guy that does the commercial with that like thing where he's kind of fixing the leaks and he just slaps the black thing on there to, I mean, like that's what it felt like to me. It's like, bam, I'm going to stop the bleeding by slamming this thing. I don't know where the verses begin. I don't know where the choruses begin. And it's the best thing I can say about it is that it's one of the shortest songs on the album at under 6 minutes. I find this song to be deplorable on an album of deplorables.
I have to say,
this is nice, Chris. I'm being nice when I say all those things.
I believe you. I would say some of the most aggressive vocals by James Hetfield that I had heard up until this point, like that part where he's just screaming about TikTok, not the app. I don't think he was that he had that much foresight, but apparently this was a song that, like many others on this album, was written about the band's struggles with addictions. Particularly Hetfield's alcohol problem, which I believe the recording of this album actually had to halt because of him having to spend time in rehab. This is just going to be me repeatedly just saying that, like, it's fine. Like, I don't find it offensive. I don't think it's very good. It's just there. I'm
offended by it. You're a better man than I.
I kind of feel this way about really the entire album, is that like it's just very. I actually don't think the album sucks. I just think that it's just middling start to finish. Like it nothing ever really. There's no melodies that, like, Metallica is a band that had some melodies on some of those songs that you would remember forever. So, you know, there's no melodies. There's the songs are drawn out, and they're not drawn out in a prog way where there's a lot of things happening in an 8-minute window. It's really just kind of the same thing. A lot of these longer 7 or 8 minute songs are really like the same song on repeat. But I think in and of itself, like it just, everything is just fine. I just think it's like nobody wants just a fine album from Metallica. They want a great album. And so, like, I think the combination of the change in style with the weird production, with the really unfathomable change in snare drum sound that Lars went with here, which is really difficult. I liken it to when you're at a concert and you're right next to a speaker, and you know that when somebody hits that bass drum or whatever, that you're going to wince each time that note hits. And that's kind of how I feel when I hear that sound. And you can go on YouTube, and there are drummers that will do covers of songs, and they'll be like, in the style of Saint Anger, Lars Ulrich drumming, and they're slamming a drumstick on a beer keg, and that's the sound that this sounds like. That for whatever reason, like, Lars was just drawn to during this recording. It's really, I mean, maybe there's some people, like, maybe it's like cilantro, where, you know how some people taste like soap. I don't know if, like, this is like, some people hear this and like, oh, this is pleasant, because to me it's like it's unpleasant. But I think after a while, you just start to get used to it. It is what it is. So, like, yeah, I mean, this is just going to be me, like, repeating myself a lot, but, like, I just thought all the songs were, like, just okay. I don't know that there was anything that I thought, like, outright sucked. I even think that there's albums we've talked about that I may have even disliked more than this.
Really?
I just thought it was very long and drawn out and boring, but, like, not necessarily shitty. It was just like a lot of just, like, just middling kind of stuff. Like it just
to me that sounds like a compliment, and I'm offended by
I guess.
it. But like, let's go to the title track, for example, track number 2. To me, the drums really pop on this, and you liken it to a beer keg. To me, it's like you took a drumstick and hit an aluminum chair, and you just hit that aluminum chair over and over again. And on a track like Saint Anger, which again, I don't understand how this thing won an award, the verses, not just the drums, but the whole production of the verses sounds like somebody recorded it on a 4-track, almost like it's a demo. And then they released it. It just doesn't make sense. And to be honest on this one, and again, I promised somebody I would say I would not say to be honest, but I know I've been saying it. Hetfield raps on this one. I don't know why. I don't know. And the gall, the temerity to even use the words "hit the lights." How dare you compare this to anything on Kill 'Em All? Who do you think you are? This is terrible. And it's repetitive. Like you said, it's so repetitive. This song doesn't need to be 7 minutes and 21 seconds. Tell me why you liked it more than I did. I'll hang up and listen.
The first 3.5 minutes of Saint Anger is my song of the week.
Stop it. Are you kidding me?
Chris, I always like
Chris.
this song.
All right.
I just think that the fact that this is a 7-minute song is so unnecessary, because this song does everything it needs to do in under 4 minutes. But the parts of the song that, repeat again for another 3.5 minutes, I actually enjoy, and it brings back memories of visiting you guys and watching SummerSlam, and I don't know. I just never disliked this song. I think it's the best in a mediocre pile of just okay songs. But this is the only one that had any sort of nostalgic value to me, and nothing else really impressed me enough to break the nostalgia pick. So that's kind of where I'm at. I know that's a lackluster description for a song of the week, but that's kind of where my head's at, and it never really left that gear from the beginning of this process.
Let's give it a listen.
I apologize.
All right, so another song that you had mentioned, some kind of monster from the documentary that followed this album. I guess they call this an epic song. It's nearly 8.5 minutes. And I'll be honest, the riff that kicks this thing off, not so bad. But then it kind of goes south fast for me with those syncopated drum beats and what I would just call uninspired bass lines. But to be fair, I thought Jason Newsted was on the album until I realized that it was kind of a fill-in. So I can't even criticize the bass because it's really just, a studio session thing with Bob Rock. But that being said, this song has like a bit of a poor man's doom metal vibe going with like the thrash drums behind it. They don't sound good, but like it's kind of interesting. But again, it sounds like they're hitting Oscar the Grouch's trash can with that cymbal. I don't know. Again, verses here sound a bit rap to me, but what I notice more than anything, and on this song and others, is that James Hetfield's vocals sound strained, and you can almost see that he's dealing with some issues in his personal life here. Again, not so much in the lyrics or the approach, but it just lacks the force and the power that it had before this album and even after this album. And I almost felt bad for them. This song has a bit of a Rob Zombie quality to it as well.
There's like a sludginess to
Yeah.
the guitar work that I don't think we ever really heard Metallica do before this.
Yeah, and to be honest, I almost feel like this song, like your last one, it's you cut down the song in half with better drums, and you might be onto something. But as presented, not good.
Yeah, again, it's just it's fine. Like I kind of like I like the guitar work towards the beginning of the song. It reminds me a bit of Queens of the Stone Age, actually. And again, it's like all the things that this album reminds us of are of other bands instead of Metallica, who's who should have, this iconic sound to it. So, but and again, like I told you earlier, I'm just going to keep repeating myself. Like I think it's an okay song. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's good. It's just there, but it's listenable. There's probably people that'll say that this album is unlistenable, and I won't argue with them. I mean, because I'm kind of on the fence, but honestly, at no point while listening to this album, did I like really hate myself or Keith or you or anybody.
He forced me to do this podcast, and now I have to listen to Snake Anger.
I think it helped that I was like working a lot of the time I was listening to it, so that the 7 or 8 minute songs didn't feel quite as long. If I was just sitting there with headphones on, I think I might be like, all right, just end already. But I don't know. Like this was surprisingly not as bad as I thought. Like just the whole album in a macro sense, just not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I think that it's just because the album's been shat on so much since it's come out that like I was really expecting it to be even worse than it actually is. But then again, it's still just, it's just there. Like it's just okay. Like you could tell that there's a lot of aggression, and the album feels very aggressive. And it's one of the reviews said that it's just a focused, relentless attack, and I think that that's a good way of putting it. It's just that it just doesn't ever really take off. Like it just kind of like sticks in, I don't know, it just stays in like this middle area. And the fact that they felt like they needed to insist on making the songs as long as they are, maybe this would be a little more tolerable if the songs were just cut down a little bit. Like it's just, to me, like I said, in a Dream Theater 12-minute song, they're gonna make it so interesting that it's not gonna feel 12 minutes. It's just gonna feel like 4 3-minute songs. Whereas a lot of these songs are really just very repetitive and don't need to be this long. And again, I point you to that YouTube video. Maybe we should post it during the week, because it's really worth hearing like what this album could have been with a little bit of a different, like a better drum recording or less harsh drum recording, and like the tracks cut down a little bit. I thought it was really cool. And I don't know. I think the album would have been. I don't think it still would have been the worst Metallica album ever, but it would have been a better version of it.
Listen, I obviously have a difference of opinion, but I understand what you're saying. I think another example is Dirty Window, the next track. It's one of the shortest tracks on the album. I think it's the second shortest. It's under 5.5 minutes. It's kind of upbeat, but there's nothing to grab onto. There's no hooks here for me, and there's changes of tempo throughout, seemingly for no reason. I completely forgot about this track, and I should be clear. When the album came out, I listened to it once, and I haven't listened to it in 20 years. So I didn't like it then.
That was one more time than I did.
Yeah, well, there you go. But there's just something about this randomness, the way they put this together. I just don't appreciate it. And they, at one point towards the end, Hetfield does this King Diamond-esque scream that just makes you long for Abigail. Like, I just not that good. I don't get it. I don't get it. Do you have any difference of opinion on this one, or is this one just, much like the others?
Yeah, it's fine. I kind of like the part. I like the part where it kind of quiets down and you hear the bass line, but then like Hetfield comes in and starts like screaming these stupid rhyming words and like ruins
no
the whole
reason.
thing. Like it's almost kind of like goofy.
Yeah.
But I do like I thought that part was kind of cool. Like just kind of quiets down and you hear the bass line. And I know that like we're not focusing, or the band was not focusing on probably bass lines on this album since they were in between bassists. But it's just another okay song. I middle of the road as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The next track is called Invisible Kid, and this was another one where this song kicks off, and I immediately find it just completely abrasive and offensive. I just don't like it. And it's the incessant banging on the steel chair. Like, I want my steel chairs in wrestling. I don't want them on my albums. Like, full stop. Credit to the pacing.
I want my beer kegs in my living room. I do not want them on my album.
There you go. Credit to the pacing. I think there's a nice cadence to this in spots. I think that it's got a bit of a catchy groove to it, so I'll give credit where credit is due. This song is not as bad overall as some of the prior ones, but it's too long and it's missing a guitar solo. And like, if you put those elements into it, you might be onto something. The chorus has this, or at least what I discern to be the chorus, has this bit of an ephemeral quality to it with layered vocals that are also weird and unnecessary. And he's just got these whiny vocals during the bridge. It's almost like a poor man's Glenn Danzig. It's a miss, and yet somehow better than the stuff that came before it. So take that as, take it as you will. Invisible Kid, your thoughts?
I think it like kicks off like it's gonna have some,
melody.
I don't know, it's like it might be good, like, and then like you said, like Oscar comes in and it's hard, it's just tough. Like I don't know, I thought this was slightly better than most of the other songs, but again, it's just like there's no reason that this song needed to be 8.5 minutes long. It's just I don't know. Again, it's just an okay song that really could have stood to be cut in half, but
well, the good news is we're almost halfway through the album. We get to My World, right? This thing starts off with a rather dark riff. Not bad. But again, the drums kick in, and Oil Can Boyd, the former pitcher for the Red Sox, comes to mind just because that's what it sounds like. The verses are repetitive and not good. There's, again, the random ideas. This is like an amalgamation of shit that they just throw against the wall. But it's hard for me to even know what's going on, because even though every one of these pieces in a vacuum might be good, thrown together, it just sounds forced. And then there's this, like, I'll call it a nu metal section with these aggressive vocals that also seem forced. And again, I think they were just trying to remain relevant and keep up with the times. Just not good.
Yeah, and now we're starting to reach the point where it's like the album I think is starting to feel a little bit drawn out because
for sure,
it
is.
The first few songs were already so long, and now we're still like that was like I will say, like, even though I didn't find that the songs were like annoyingly long when I was busy doing something or whatever or working, but there were times where I would look and be like, holy shit, there's still 3 songs left on this album. I feel like I've been listening to it for 3 hours.
It's
not that it was like that it was like a torturous 3 hours, but it was just kind of like, all right, I'm ready to listen to something else now.
It made you appreciate all the other stuff we talked about earlier. I'll tell you that.
I tell you what, it really made me appreciate Metallica's most recent album, which kind of fell outside my top 50, but I did enjoy it. I listened to it a few times, and it was probably honestly my favorite Metallica album probably since Load or Reload, I would say.
Oh, no question. I thought it was their best, and I didn't think it was great, but there's a couple of really good songs on there. Any of those songs would have been my song of the week compared to this thing.
Yeah, and even that album again, like, had there were some songs that were just like, it's weird that Metallica like turned into this like band where their songs were so long, like, it's 7-minute plus songs. There's like 3 songs that are over 7 minutes. 1 song's over 11. It's just kind of strange. That said, though, I think it was more of what we came to love about the band in a more modern setting. Whereas this, I think, they probably were trying to reach a certain audience of that time. I just wasn't a fan of that kind of music at that time. So like, this wasn't impressing me that Metallica wanted to try to like impress the nu metal people when I wasn't impressed by the good nu metal bands, never mind the bands that were trying to be nu metal bands. And a lot of the nu metal bands, shit, man, if you ever listen to like an interview with like the guys from Papa Roach, they were like, we only did nu metal because we wanted to get noticed. We wanted to play like Iron Maiden and like we listened to like regular metal. Like that's the kind of band we wanted to be.
That's cool. I never knew that.
Yeah. And I think that their later releases show that as they turned away from that style and did a more traditional metal style albums like going forward. But like, people are always going to remember that first single. What the hell was that first single? Papa Roach. What was that song that? Yes, that was the one that just put them over the top, and it had that that kind of like rapping kind of vibe to it. That it's like there were plenty of other bands doing this better, and nobody really was asking for a band like Metallica to make an album like this. It's just, we want you to make. I'm not saying that you need to make Master of Puppets 16 times in a row, but like people were hoping for, because especially I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, because this was a long time ago, but this album was posited as like this return to the metal version of Metallica after this kind of like almost adult contemporary Metallica from Load and Reload, which I think was like, if people thought that the Black Album was trying to be radio friendly, I think Load and Reload kind of took that to a whole nother level. And so this was supposed to be like the return to the metal version of Metallica, and then we got this, and people were like, shit, maybe I'll go dust off Reload and go listen to Low Man's Lyric again.
I gotta say, this was supposed to be their return to form. This was supposed to be their going back to the metal roots. Unfortunately, it was the new metal roots, which just sound nothing like their old metal roots. I don't know. Track 7, aptly named "Shoot Me Again," because by this point, I was begging for it, man. I was put me out of my misery. Kidding aside, this is like another mid-paced banger. There's an extended intro, which not terrible until those fake, well, for lack of a better word, Alice in Chains-esque vocals kick in and take me right out of the mood. Parts of this are unlistenable. Ironically, there is an instrumental section in this song, but again, no solos. And all I can say is that part of the lyrics go, "Shoot me again, I ain't dead yet." Kind of wish I was, though. And I'm just like curious, how is this the song? Like, how is this the band that wrote Whiplash 20 years prior? I just don't understand how they do it. I don't imagine that this is one of your favorites.
I actually don't mind it that much. I kind of like the Alice in Chains-ness of it because, I don't know, it's just a little bit different. I feel like the times where like things get quiet and slow down on this album are the parts that I find most memorable, because it's just different and it's not just this like onslaught of
noise.
Of just, steel, like you said, steel chairs. Like I'm getting a concussion just listening to this album.
Do you realize that the Master Plan album we talked about came out the same year?
Yeah, guess which one I liked better.
No doubt. Any other comments on Shoot Me Again, or shall we move on to Sweet Amber?
Yeah, we can definitely move on to Death Magnetic.
Yeah, really. Sweet Amber starts off with this like bluesy guitar intro, which I will say is kind of intriguing to me. And I didn't mind the extended intro other than the production side of it. It has a nice cadence to it. But again, the vocals are uninspired. And I think he's like just trying to rhyme words that remind me of like a Dr. Seuss book or something like that. I actually don't mind a lot of the guitar work on this track. And I think it's one of the better songs on the album. just a lot of gimmicks though, and with the guitar work and stuff later on with some of the riffs. But all in all, if I had to pick like a second song of the week, I might go with this one. I actually don't find this absolutely abhorrent.
I think the fact that it's short helps.
Yes.
And by short, I mean 5 minutes and 27 seconds long.
It makes you pine for motor breath that it's clocking it at 3 minutes and 3 seconds, I'll tell you.
Yeah. This was not my least favorite song on the album. I don't even know if I have one. It's just like this pile of songs that all just were fine, like lining the bottom, and then like some other songs slightly like going above that bottom, but like that's kind of really it. And this was another one I think that was a little bit higher, and I think again I think that it benefited from being a shorter track in comparison to the rest of the album.
Fair. We get to The Unnamed Feeling, and like the last time that I listened to the album, I didn't even realize that this was a different song at first, because again, nothing is an earworm here. The verses have a bit of a Marilyn Manson quality to it with the whispering at the outset and stuff. And then when the song gets going, it's those layered vocals which just don't sound well. This is not like other bands that do that kind of thing well. I found the guitars boring. The drums are a bit muted on this track, so that's a plus. If nothing else, it's not a terrible song. It's just boring. And there's this part during the bridge where Hetfield is like, I don't know, whining, and it just reminds me of like an emo thing. Like My Chemical Romance did this so much better. I don't quite understand why he felt the need to sing in this particular style, but that took me out of it as well.
Yeah. I thought this song was all right. It's too long, but like, I don't know that there was anything about it that particularly bothered me, other than the length. It was fine. I thought the purveying riff was not terrible, although it was repetitive. But this one was fine. Again, like, you know, I feel like I'm not really breaking any ground when it comes to description of things here, but
they don't give you much to work with. If I'm being honest, it's not that easy.
I will say, if I was going to like vote off half the songs on this album and make this like an EP that rolled in at about 37 minutes, I think this song would probably make the cut.
Interesting.
I don't know. Like I just
I thought you would just cut 4 minutes off every track and just have each track end halfway through. I think you'd probably get to the same spot. Too.
Again, go to YouTube, listen to the Saint Anger, but if it were good, and I don't know, it might give you a new, or at least a little bit more respect for the album. That maybe if you dig a little bit underneath, there's some pieces of something good that can be unearthed from the coal mine that is this album.
Well, I'll say this: if there's some good, maybe the lone bright spot or lone semi bright spot for me, it was Purify, the penultimate track. This is my song of the week. Let's give it a quick listen, and then I'll tell you why. Good luck choosing a minute, though.
Ugh.
Yeah. So why did I choose Purify, right? I think it's more upbeat than some of the prior tracks. And the first few measures I genuinely enjoy. That is before the drum banging kicks in. So like you got a first few measures, I like them. I think it's a bit creative and there's some semblance of melody here. It's not great. I wouldn't call it good, but I think it's the best of the rest. And even though the vocals aren't great, at least the structure of the song I liked, and it's had this groovy element to it that I thought was cool. And the instrumental portion is by far the best on the album. Even the bridge has some moments on it as well. Still sounds terrible, but by and large, there were things that I could at least point to on this song that I liked, which I couldn't say about some of the others. Any thoughts on this one, or is it more of the same for you?
I think the chorus, if you can call it that, is really dumb sounding. Like him screaming, like rah, 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 rah. Like
I didn't say I liked the whole song. I said I liked
it's just
parts of this song.
just another one of those songs that I think just sound kind of goofy instead of like I know he was going for like aggressive, but it almost sounds kind of like almost childish in a way. So I didn't really love that. I think the rest of the song is okay. It's not bad, and I definitely don't begrudge you for choosing it for the song of the week, but I do think that whole like Purify part is kind of stupid.
Well, I can certainly appreciate that. You don't have to include the chorus when you let everyone hear the minute of this track. But when things couldn't get worse after 65 minutes, we get to All Within My Hands. What better way to end the album? This long, drawn-out album than, the longest song on the album. The intro isn't bad, but then this song is just probably twice as long, maybe 3 times as long as it needs to be. And it's just, again, a bunch of ideas thrown together with whiny vocals, and even the decent riffs just don't save it. And you get to the end, that kill, kill, kill section, awful, and it just reeks of desperation to me. This was a complete miss. I was so happy it was over, though, that I'll give it at least some modicum of credit.
Yeah. It's this is definitely not one of my favorites. This one would be voted off the island, I think, for me.
No doubt. And so as we got to the end of this thing, again, Keith, I don't know what I ever did to you. I considered you a friend, but I'm questioning everything right now. I'm so happy that we're going to be listening to something else this week, but I'm going to kick it over to you.
It would have been even worse if he made you listen to this album and then got you sick in the same week. That would have been
I
double.
think that would have been the worst. I do agree with that, but I want to hear from you. I'm really curious. Scale of 1 to 10 what is this? Is this a 5 for you? Is it like totally right down the middle average, or is it somewhere else?
I will. Before I tell you, I want to read what Keith had to say.
Okay.
He did leave us with a little blurb, and I think it was well written and deserves to be shared with our audience. So before I give you my score, I will read this. Keith says, in the metal community, St. Anger is like Jepson's Malort. Everyone has to take a shot eventually, and its poor taste never truly leaves your mouth. Lars's snare drum is the stuff of infamy, up there with Watergate and the Atlanta Falcons blowing a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. The fact it hit number 1 in 30 countries is a feat rivaled only by tales of Greek mythology. Its legacy has scarred metal fans for 20 years, and St. Anger is, without question, the worst there is, the worst there was, and the worst there ever will be. Also, in the words of Michael Kelso, it's funny when friends get hurt. I've been giddy with excitement awaiting this twisted birthday present from you guys for months, and my fantasy of the damned has become reality. So, happy birthday, Keith, and
well said.
Well said, yeah.
I couldn't have said it any better. I'm going to take a shot of Malort just to get this taste out of my mouth. 1 to 10, where are you, bud?
To me, I gave it a 4.5. Like, again, like I do think that there are things we've listened to that, not many, are worse, if not in the ballpark. But to be honest with you, I would rather listen to either of the Slayer or Anthrax albums that we've listened to. But that said, like I would, it's still a Metallica album, so it's not like without merit at all.
Well, I'm not giving it a 1. I mean, it's not
Right.
that bad, but it's.
I'm just defending my score. I think probably most people would have expected it to be lower, but I just think that there are moments where it's okay, and like it's just really like the world's most okayest metal album. Like, and I get why people are upset about that, because we don't want okay from Metallica, and I think that I had made a comment when we were talking about our albums of 2023. And we were talking about like things that were disappointing, and I think I had mentioned like Within Temptation's latest album, and it's like it's fine, it's okay, but like I don't want Within Temptation to make an okay album. I want them to make a great album, because they've done that many times before, and I know they're capable of it. So just keep doing it. And Metallica, made 3 of the greatest metal albums ever, which I don't think is really debatable for most metal fans.
No matter what,
and this just falls flat. I mean, that's just what it comes down to.
Yeah, and no matter what your taste is, nobody's going to say Ride the Lightning stinks. Like they're undisputed in the genre. However, this is not that. And I struggled with the score because my initial inclination was, well, this is a 2, but the reality is there is music, not metal music per se, but there's music out there which is much worse than this, even though, there's music out there without any redeeming qualities. This has some redeeming qualities, so I'm going to give it a 3 begrudgingly. There's not a lot that I would, there's not a lot that I would put this ahead of, but it's certainly not the worst album ever made. Compared to other metal albums, maybe it would go down a little bit, but I'm going to give it a 3. It has guitars, it has drums, it has vocals, and that's about all I can say about it. Keith, happy birthday, my friend.
It reminds me of a few years ago, there was an interview with, I can't remember if it was a coach or a general manager of the Ottawa Senators, and I don't know if he like lost his train of thought or whatever, but he just ended up saying the Ottawa Senators are a team. And that was the sentence. And so in celebration of that wonderful quote, Saint Anger is an album.
And with that, let me transition to some news items. Did you hear about this shipwrecked cruise that apparently was going to Jamaica and hit the pier due to high winds? And I was thinking about 70,000 tons in our episode last week. And the joke in my thread was that, like, this, thank God it wasn't us, man, because it has got to be scary when that cruise hits the pier. But strong winds in Jamaica, not a good combination.
Jeez, no, I didn't hear about that. I did hear about 2 planes colliding on the runway in Boston earlier today or this morning, I believe. Thankfully, they were just, I believe they were taxiing, but it caused a whole bunch of delays and stuff. So, unrelated to anything, but, since this album went off the rails, I might as well talk about some other things that went off the rails as well.
Nice. I want to just mention a couple of other news items, rapid fire. Accept has announced their new album. It comes out April 26th of this year. It's called Humanoid, out on Napalm Records. The first single is coming out at the end of this month. And a bunch of other tour news, I guess. Powerwolf going out on tour, doing their first full August-September, or I should say their first North American tour. Doing, I guess probably about 10 or 12 shows, starting in LA, ending in Quebec City, Canada. Very interesting. I know a lot of folks are actually going to the show in Atlanta on September the 8th as it kind of piggybacks off of Prague Power. And they're bringing out Unleash the Archers with them, which makes for a pretty cool tour. I don't know that I'm going to see them in Atlanta, but I do have to say, really cool. It's just a shame that they're playing New York City the same night as Lord of the Lost. So decisions will have to be made by some, but pretty cool that both bands are playing in New York the same night.
Yeah, I actually have tickets to the show in Atlanta, since I'll be there anyway. We'll stay an extra day. I'd say that had I not seen them last year, this would have been like a absolute can't miss. For me, this was kind of like a, let me see what my friends want to do. And if they want to go, I'll go. And so they wanted to go, so I'm going. But I think I would have been okay. I assume it's probably going to be a very similar set list to the one we saw, but definitely having Unleash the Archers on board is definitely a plus because I enjoy them quite a bit. And I think that it's a good, nice combo of two bands I think probably have similar fan bases of just your, good old-fashioned power metal types. I think that'll be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to that. I can't promise you how much energy I'm going to have after 4 days of prog power, especially with having full plans to attend all 4 days, which I had not done in a couple of years. But this year, it's just there's too much good stuff happening on the first 2 days. Although one band did drop out earlier today. I guess we could mention that as well. Why don't you lay down the news on that?
Yeah, after seeing them twice last week, Scar Symmetry has had to pull out of this year's Prague Power USA Festival. They are citing personal reasons, and from what I understand, it is nothing bad. It is actually quite good news on that front, but unfortunately, they are unable to attend, and I have full faith that they will be back at the festival at some point in the future, but they will not be playing this year. So that is a miss. I do look forward to seeing them at some point again in the future. And just one other piece of news that I wanted to mention. After 25 years plus in the band, Magnus Andreasen has left Hardcore Superstar. Their longtime drummer has left the band. Having covered them in the past on the show, that was an episode that I thoroughly enjoyed. I definitely think this is a blow, not irreplaceable, but certainly a new direction for the band. So hoping that I
heard that they were going to get Mick Foley.
I could understand why. I mean, one hardcore superstar for another. It would make perfect sense. But I digress. What am I listening to next week to cleanse my palate after what I endured this past week? Give me Wu-Tang Clan. Give me Dr. Dre. Give me like the Teletubbies. I really don't care. What am I listening to next week?
Well, you may recall maybe a few years before Saint Anger, Megadeth made a little album called Risk. No, I'm just kidding.
Fuck you. No, what am I listening to next week?
We will. I have a feeling we will talk about Risk at another day.
Straight up, I'm willing to bet I enjoy Risk more than what we just listened to, and I do not like Risk, but at least there's like one or two songs on there that are palatable.
I'll say this. Risk also had a song that was tied into wrestling because Goldberg would come out to crush him for a while. And I got to tell you, I'd rather listen to the song Saint Anger than the song Crush 'Em. Yeah. I'm not going to speak of the album versus album, but with song versus song, Crush 'Em might be my least favorite Megadeth song.
We should have done both albums side by side and done them. That could have been episode 200. But again, a story for another day and an opportunity lost. What
the title of that episode would have been called "Shoot Me Again."
Yeah, shoot me again, please. What are we listening to next week, my friend?
Well, it's funny. I was, going through our list, our spreadsheet of albums we've done, and a band that I thought we've done more recently came up. It turns out we have not talked about this band since November of 2022. And we only talked about this band twice previously, and this just seems like the next logical album. We talked about Land of the Free. We talked about Somewhere Out in Space. We're going to talk about Power Plant, which I consider the Gamma Ray Ultimate Trilogy. Those albums. I swear I thought we talked about Land of the Free like more recently. I can't believe it's been well over a year. So I kind of wanted to complete the trifecta and talk about Power Plant, which was came out in 1999 and was the second album with the late 90s, early 2000s Gamma Ray lineup with Dan Zimmerman and Hendro Richter, Dirk Schlachter, and Kai Hansen.
It's actually going to be a nice celebration. The album is 25 years old next month. I thought you were going to choose this next month, but you got there a month early. So A good choice.
That was completely by accident.
I thought it might be, but no, kidding aside, this is a very good choice and a very nice palate cleanser. I actually have an album picked out for the following week, and I'll just say this, a little hint. It's an anniversary of sorts for that album for a band we have not yet covered. I'll just say that. So something else on the horizon. We will push on as we get forward to episode 200 and obviously come back in early March with another request. So I look forward to that. But this one has gone much longer than I expected, given the fact that I didn't think we would have much to say. But here we are. It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much to all of our fans. Please give us a like and a follow. It does help others find the show. Consider joining our Patreon and lend us your support. And Chris, I look forward to cleansing my palate as early as tomorrow morning when I go listen to Power Plant. So thank you.
Yeah, you got it. I'm looking forward to talking about this album because I have a lot of fond memories of when it came out, and it's going to be interesting. I'm really curious to see where my score and your score kind of line up with the previous two albums that we've already covered. So should be interesting. But yeah, I always just considered that those three were really the core Gamma Ray three albums that I personally love the most. Yeah, looking forward to that. So Keith, thank you for the request. In kidding aside, it's good for us to talk about things that aren't always, love fests. And this was fun. So happy birthday, my friend. And yeah, we will talk to you all soon.